HTML5 and CSS3 tutorials for beginners, fonts and typography. Now, this sample document currently has no font declarations defined, and yet we can still see the fonts. That's because when we do not define it, computer operating system default fonts will be used. So computed font in this example then will be font family times New Roman. Now let's go and say, you know what, no, I want to define my own font to be used. So then we can say font size, let's define that first to be 16 pixels at the HTML level. Then on the body element, let's set the font size to be 1 rem. That's still 16 pixels. But now let's define font family. We can choose many different ones, whether it is shown here, whether you can find many different ones on internet. And we can also set line height, which we will, let me actually save this document first. And let's refresh the page. Now the font has changed. Now, as I've said, line height is important because it makes your fonts more readable. Think of line height as the line and the height of it. It's in the gap in between that line compared to the one above. Let's set the line height to be 1.5. Let's set that. Let's refresh and see what happens. And that all of a sudden became more readable. We can also set font weight to be, whether it's on numeric values or we can say bold as an example. And everything's gone bold. We also have something called word spacing. Let's look at that. Let's put 0.3 rem. Let's refresh. Now the spacing in between the words has changed. We could even say 0.1 to see what happens now. The words in between, the space in between words, they change. So that option is also available for you. Let's save this document as an example. Now, what I can suggest to you to consider is this. When you're creating web documents, unless only you're going to visit it, or unless only you and your family is going to visit that website, then you can use any font that you want. But if you're creating websites for clients, then you definitely need to explore different fonts and always consider making your fonts readable, easier to read, more legible. Research as to how you can make your fonts more readable, whether you're considering the colors of it, whether the sizes, whether the font family that you want to use. Always consider the end user, as in how you can use the fonts and the sizes and the colors so that they are more readable. That is the most important aspects of using fonts. Before I close up, let me also show you something else. Let's say article p element, and let's take a look at text rendering. And in fact, let me just paste the values for them. You can use auto. let the browser decide, as to let text rendering engine decide which one to use. Or you can say, you know what, optimize for speed of loading of the fonts, rendering of the text. Or you can select optimize legibility. That means more readable, clear to read. Or you can set geometric precision, text rendering. Which one you should use? I would recommend select optimize legibility for the default fonts that you're using, because you always want to choose legibility, as in readability, over everything else concerning fonts, because more easier to read the content will always help the visitor enjoy the website much more than everything else. And I'll talk with you in the next video session.